10 years of my life poured into this company. Nights, weekends, canceled vacations, all sacrificed for the promise of growth. When the senior architect position opened, everyone said it was mine. Then came the announcement they hired someone from outside, someone with half my experience and twice my salary. The real punch to the gut. My boss asked me to train him. Before I share how I stood my ground and what happened next, let me know where you are watching from. Drop a like and subscribe if you have ever had to fight for what you deserve in your career. I still remember my first day at TechFusion like it was yesterday. Fresh out of college with my computer science degree, eager to prove myself in the real world. I was hired as a junior software developer, one of 20 on the team. The company was growing fast, establishing itself as an innovative solution provider in the healthcare software space. From day one, I poured everything into my work. While other new hires were heading out for happy hours, I was hunched over my keyboard, learning every inch of our codebase. Within 6 months, I had contributed to 3 major features in our flagship product, MedSync. My dedication caught the attention of Thomas, the development director, who became something of a mentor to me. "Fernando, you have the kind of drive that builds careers," Thomas told me during my first performance review. "Keep this up, and you will go far here." Those words fueled me through countless late nights and working weekends. When most of my friends were enjoying their 20s, I was building what I thought was my future. By year 3, I was promoted to mid-level developer. By year 5, senior developer. In my 7th year, I became lead developer, managing a team of 12. Throughout this journey, I developed a particularly close friendship with Alex, another developer who started just 2 months after me. We shared a similar work ethic, but Alex always maintained a better work-life balance than I did. He would often remind me that there was a world outside the office. "The company appreciates your dedication," Alex would say, "but remember, they would replace you tomorrow if they had to." I always laughed off these warnings. TechFusion felt different. We were building technology that helped doctors provide better care. Our software tracked patient treatments, medication interactions, and recovery progress. I could point to specific features I had built that were literally saving lives. This was not just a job for me. It was a calling. My family noticed the sacrifices. I missed my nephew's baptism to fix a critical bug before a major client demo. I cut short my vacation with my girlfriend Lisa to handle an unexpected system migration. I worked through my father's 60th birthday party in the corner of the restaurant, putting out fires on my laptop while everyone else celebrated. "The company is lucky to have you," my father said that night, a hint of concern in his voice. "But make sure they know your value." I assured him they did. Every performance review brought glowing feedback and promises of advancement. Thomas frequently told me I was being groomed for greater things. I believed him completely. When Jack Reynolds, our senior software architect, announced his retirement, it felt like the perfect opportunity. The role was the next logical step in my career path, overseeing the entire technical direction of our products. Jack himself pulled me aside after his announcement. "I have recommended you as my replacement," he said, patting my shoulder. "No one knows these systems like you do." The validation from Jack meant everything. He had been with the company since its founding and was highly respected throughout the industry. His endorsement practically guaranteed the position was mine. The next day, Thomas called me into his office to discuss the opening. He leaned back in his chair, smiling confidently. "Between us, Fernando, you are the top candidate," he said. "The posting is just a formality. Start thinking about how you will transition your current responsibilities." With this assurance, I threw myself into preparation. I enrolled in advanced architecture courses, earned 2 additional certifications, and read every leadership book Thomas recommended. I created detailed plans for how I would improve our development processes and technical infrastructure in the new role. My colleagues seemed just as certain as I was about the outcome. They began coming to me with questions they would normally direct to Jack. Senior management invited me to strategic planning meetings. Even the CEO, Martin Davidson, mentioned my upcoming expanded role during a company all-hands meeting. Bolstered by this support and apparent certainty, Lisa and I decided it was time to buy a house closer to the office. We found a beautiful place just 15 minutes from TechFusion headquarters, stretching our budget based on the salary increase the new position would bring. We signed the mortgage papers 3 weeks before the official announcement was scheduled. "To your new position and our new home," Lisa toasted the night after we closed on the house. "You have earned this, Fernando." The final interview process was merely a formality in my mind. I met with the executive team, outlined my vision for our technology roadmap, and answered their questions with the confidence of someone who had lived and breathed the company for a decade. Their nodding heads and approving smiles confirmed what I already believed: the position was mine. The evening before the announcement, Thomas asked me to prepare transition documentation for my current role. I stayed until 9 p.m., creating detailed guides for whoever would take over my team lead position. As I was finally packing up to leave, my phone buzzed with a text from Alex. "Just heard from my contact in HR. Congratulations in advance, my friend. Well deserved." I drove home with a smile that would not fade. Lisa had prepared my favorite meal, and we talked excitedly about the future. That night I fell asleep feeling completely secure in my career and the path ahead. The next morning, the company gathered in the main conference room for the announcement. I wore my best suit and positioned myself near the front, ready to shake hands and accept congratulations. The room was packed with colleagues, many of whom gave me thumbs up or knowing smiles as they entered. Martin Davidson, the CEO, stepped to the podium precisely at 9 a.m. After a few general announcements, he cleared his throat. "Now for the moment many of you have been waiting for," he said. "As you know, Jack Reynolds has been an invaluable part of our success for 15 years. Finding his replacement was no easy task." I straightened my tie, preparing to stand. After an extensive search, I am pleased to introduce the newest member of our leadership team, our new senior software architect, Jason Parker. The room went silent for a moment before confused applause broke out. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. My mind raced to process what I had just heard. Who was Jason Parker? I scanned the room and saw a young man in his early 30s standing up from a seat near the executive team. He had not even been with the company before today. Jason comes to us with an impressive background in cloud architecture, Martin continued, as if he had not just shattered my world. He previously led development teams at Technova and has some exciting, fresh perspectives to bring to Tech Fusion. I forced myself to breathe normally as Jason made his way to the podium. He spoke confidently about his excitement to join the team and his visions for the future, none of which revealed any deep understanding of our products or industry. When the meeting concluded, colleagues approached me with confused expressions and sympathetic pats on the shoulder. No one quite knew what to say. Thomas avoided eye contact, entirely slipping out a side door before I could approach him. Alex found me still sitting alone after most people had left. "What the hell just happened?" he asked, his face a mixture of shock and anger on my behalf. "I have no idea," I replied, my voice barely steady. "I need to talk to Thomas." I spent the rest of the morning in a fog, going through the motions of my work while trying to process this betrayal. Around lunchtime, I requested a meeting with Thomas. His assistant said he was booked solid, but would have 15 minutes at 4 p.m. Those 5 hours were among the longest of my life. When I finally entered his office, Thomas was unusually interested in the papers on his desk. "Have a seat, Fernando," he said without looking up. "I assume you want to discuss the announcement." 10 years, Thomas, I said, struggling to keep my voice level. 10 years I have given to this company. You told me the position was mine. He finally met my eyes, though his gaze kept shifting away. "The executive team decided we needed a fresh perspective," he said, reciting what sounded like a prepared statement. "Jason brings external experience that will help us expand into new markets." "He looks like he just graduated," I replied. "What experience could he possibly have that trumps my decade with our systems?" Thomas shuffled some papers. "He has 4 years of experience in cloud-native architecture, which is where we are heading." The committee felt that was more valuable than familiarity with our legacy systems. 4 years. This stranger had less than half my experience, and had just been handed the position I had spent a decade working toward. Something did not add up. Who exactly was on this committee, I asked. And when was Jason even interviewed? I never saw him in the office before today. Thomas grew visibly uncomfortable. "The interviews were conducted discreetly. And Fernando, we will need your help getting Jason up to speed. No one knows our systems like you do." The request hit like another slap in the face. Not only had I been passed over, but now I was expected to train the person who took my position. I maintained my composure, but inside a line had been crossed. As I stood to leave, I noticed a photo on Thomas's credenza I had seen many times before: Thomas, on a golf course with his brother Craig. Suddenly, I remembered something. Craig was an executive at Technova, the company Jason had come from. "How is Craig these days?" I asked casually. Thomas blinked in surprise. "Fine. Why do you ask?" "Just curious if he knows Jason from Technova." Thomas's face flushed. "That has nothing to do with this decision, Fernando. I hope you will be professional about this transition." I nodded and left without another word, but now I had a thread to pull. Over the next week, I did some investigating. A quick LinkedIn search confirmed my suspicions. Jason had worked directly under Thomas's brother at Technova. His experience was primarily in front-end development with no substantial architectural work at all. I discreetly spoke with colleagues throughout the company. No one in engineering had been consulted about Jason's hire. Several senior team members expressed concerns similar to mine about his qualifications. When I attempted to get clarity from human resources, I was met with rehearsed responses about confidential hiring processes and strategic direction decisions. It was clear they had been instructed to deflect questions. The pieces began to fit together when I overheard a conversation between Thomas and Jason in the break room. I had stepped around the corner to refill my coffee when their voices carried over. "Martin really enjoyed the golf outing last weekend," Thomas was saying. "He mentioned you made quite an impression." "My uncle always said networking is more important than the resume," Jason replied with a laugh. "Besides, fresh blood is what stagnant companies need, right?" I nearly dropped my mug. Uncle I later confirmed through social media that Martin Davidson, our CEO, was indeed Jason's uncle by marriage. The position had never been mine to earn. It had been reserved for family all along. The final piece of the puzzle was the most painful. Through a friend in finance, I learned that Jason's starting salary was 30% higher than what I currently made for a role he was clearly underqualified to perform. The betrayal cut deep. 10 years of loyalty, thousands of hours of extra work, countless personal sacrifices, all counted for nothing against family connections and golf course deals. My sense of injustice grew when an email from Thomas arrived in my inbox, with the subject line, "Training Plan for Jason." The message requested that I create a comprehensive knowledge transfer document and schedule daily sessions with Jason over the next month. "This is an opportunity to demonstrate your team player mentality," Thomas wrote. "The executive team appreciates your cooperation during this transition." The condescending tone made my blood boil, but I agreed to an initial meeting with Jason. It became immediately clear that he was in over his head. He struggled to understand basic concepts about our system architecture and seemed surprised by the complexity of our healthcare integrations. "Just write this down in simple terms," he said repeatedly. "I am a quick study." His entitled attitude only strengthened my resolve. When Thomas checked in about the training timeline, I responded with pointed questions. "I am curious why I should be responsible for training someone less qualified who was given the position I earned," I said calmly. Thomas frowned. "This attitude is not helpful, Fernando. We all need to pull together as a team." Team. The word had lost all meaning. Things deteriorated rapidly over the following weeks. Jason began implementing changes to systems he barely understood. He ordered a complete rewrite of a critical patient data module that my team had spent years perfecting, claiming it would be more efficient with a new framework he preferred. The development team grew increasingly frustrated. Build times doubled. Integration tests failed. Customer support tickets multiplied. Through it all, Jason pointed fingers at inadequate documentation and resistance to change from existing staff. Projects fell behind schedule. Features were delayed. In team meetings, tension grew palpable as Jason dismissed concerns from experienced developers and pushed his agenda without understanding the consequences. My own motivation hit rock bottom. The company I had given everything to now felt like a foreign, hostile place. I began having trouble sleeping, worrying about both my career and the mortgage on a house I could barely afford without the promotion I had been promised. Lisa noticed the change in me. "You are not the same person anymore," she said one night. "You used to love going to work. Now you look like you are heading to a funeral every morning." She was right. Something inside me had broken. The worst part was watching Jason take credit for my past work. In a presentation to the board, he showcased the patient tracking system I had architected as an example of improvements he was implementing, never once mentioning it predated his arrival. The breaking point came during a demonstration for our largest client, Memorial Health System. Jason had ignored my warnings about changes to the medication interaction module, insisting his approach was superior. When the system crashed in the middle of the presentation, corrupting test patient data, he immediately blamed me. Unfortunately, the documentation from the previous team lead was insufficient, he told the clients as I sat in stunned silence. "This is exactly why we needed new leadership." The clients left unhappy, putting our multi-million-dollar contract at risk. In the executive meeting that followed, Jason doubled down on his accusations. Despite my presenting email evidence of my warnings, Thomas sided with Jason. "Fernando, your resistance to the new direction has been noted," Thomas said sternly. "Perhaps your attachment to the old ways is clouding your judgment." I left that meeting feeling like I was in the twilight zone. Reality had been completely inverted. Competence was punished, incompetence rewarded. That evening, checking my email one last time before leaving, I discovered I had been accidentally copied on a thread between Thomas Martin and someone named Richard Parker with a board member email address. The subject line read Jason's Integration Planning January Discussion. January. The position had not been posted until March. As I read through the thread, my worst suspicions were confirmed. Richard Parker, Jason's uncle and a major investor, had been pushing for a position for his nephew since the beginning of the year. The entire interview process had been theater. One line from Martin stood out: "We will need to manage Fernando carefully. He is too valuable to lose entirely, but Jason needs that title for his career progression." I sat in the empty office, reading and rereading the thread, as tears of anger welled in my eyes. The depth of the betrayal was staggering. In the parking lot, I finally broke down, pounding the steering wheel in frustration before calling Lisa. "They never intended to promote me," I said when she answered. "It was all a lie." "Then why are you still training the guy who took your job?" she asked after I explained everything. "You need to stand up for yourself, Fernando." She was right. It was time to set boundaries. I spent that night reflecting on my options. The company had shown its true colors, but I still had bills to pay and a career to consider. Burning bridges would satisfy my anger, but might damage my professional reputation in our relatively small industry. The next morning, Alex found me before I could even set down my laptop bag. "We need to talk," he said, pulling me into an empty conference room. "Half the development team is updating their resumes, including me. Jason's latest mandate will require rewriting the entire patient portal from scratch for no good reason." "What are you going to do?" I asked. "I have an interview next week," he admitted. "But that is not the point. You need to stop helping Jason. He is destroying everything we built, and you are enabling it by training him." His words solidified my resolve. After our conversation, I crafted a careful email to Thomas copying HR and the executive team. After considerable reflection, I must inform you that I will no longer be able to participate in Jason's training program beyond my normal, technical documentation responsibilities. The circumstances surrounding the hiring decision and subsequent events have created an untenable situation that compromises my professional integrity. I remain committed to my current role and responsibilities, but must decline additional training duties that fall outside my job description. I concluded with a professional but firm tone, attaching the email thread I had been accidentally copied on as evidence of the predetermined nature of the hiring process. The response was immediate. Thomas called me, his voice tight with anger. "What do you think you are doing?" he demanded. "This is completely unacceptable." "I disagree," I replied, surprising myself with my calm tone. What was unacceptable was lying to me for months about a position that was never available then, expecting me to train a less qualified replacement. "I am simply establishing professional boundaries. There will be consequences for this, Fernando." "I understand," I said. "I have documented everything, and am prepared for whatever happens next." The call ended abruptly, but a strange weight had lifted from my shoulders. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. The following day, I was summoned to a meeting with Thomas and Diane from HR. Their strategy was clear from the start: intimidation. "Your email has caused quite a stir," Diane began. "Refusing an assignment from your manager could be grounds for disciplinary action." I nodded and calmly presented printouts of my evidence, the email thread revealing the predetermined hire documentation of Jason's costly mistakes and my performance reviews showing a decade of excellent service. "I am not refusing my actual job duties," I explained. "I am declining to perform additional work, training someone for a position I was misled about for months. I believe any external review of these circumstances would find my position reasonable." Diane shifted uncomfortably as she reviewed the email thread. Thomas attempted to dismiss it as out of context, but his explanations grew increasingly incoherent. The meeting ended in a stalemate with vague mentions of revisiting the conversation later. What I had not anticipated was the ripple effect my stand would create. By afternoon, word had spread throughout the development department. Several team members stopped by my desk or messaged me privately to express support. Most had experienced their own frustrations with the new direction, but had felt powerless to speak up. Alex organized what he called a code quality initiative, which was really a subtle work slowdown. Team members began rigorously documenting every flaw in Jason's directives, creating a paper trail of his technical incompetence, while technically following orders. Most surprisingly, Sarah Williams, the executive director of the client implementation department, asked me to coffee the following week. "I have heard what has been happening," she said once we were away from the office. Several of us on the executive team had concerns about Jason's hire but were overruled by Martin. "The memorial health situation has everyone worried." She leaned forward. "I have an opening for a technical implementation specialist in my department. It is a lateral move in terms of title, but would get you away from Thomas and Jason. The role has growth potential." I thanked her for the offer and promised to consider it. The fact that cracks were appearing in the executive solidarity gave me hope that truth might eventually prevail. Meanwhile, Jason was floundering without my guidance. Critical deadlines were missed. The patient portal rewrite was a disaster. Clients were calling daily with complaints about features that had previously worked flawlessly. I focused on my own work, documenting everything meticulously and ensuring my team delivered despite the chaos around us. I also began quietly applying for positions at other companies, leveraging my decade of experience and specific healthcare technology knowledge. Within 2 weeks, I had an offer from MedTech Solutions, a direct competitor for a senior architect position with a salary 20% higher than even Jason's. I drafted my resignation letter but held off submitting it immediately. A small irrational part of me still hoped TechFusion would correct its mistake. That chance came sooner than expected. Thomas called me into his office, his demeanor completely transformed from our last interaction. "Fernando, we need to talk about your future here," he began, his tone almost friendly. "I have been speaking with Martin and the board about creating a special position for you. Technical fellow with a significant compensation adjustment." I listened silently as he outlined an offer clearly designed in panic. When he finished, I simply shook my head. "I appreciate the offer, but I have accepted a position elsewhere," I said, sliding my resignation letter across the desk. "My last day will be 2 weeks from today." The color drained from his face. "You cannot be serious. Where are you going, MedTech Solutions?" "As senior architect." Thomas immediately called Martin, who appeared at the office within 30 minutes, something previously unheard of for the CEO who typically worked remotely. "Fernando, we need to discuss this," Martin said, closing Thomas's door. "Jason has been struggling, and we cannot afford to lose you right now." "I tried to warn you about that 3 months ago," I replied evenly. "But you had already made your decision in January, right?" Martin had the decency to look embarrassed. "Business decisions are complicated. Family connections matter in this industry, but we still value your contributions. What will it take to keep you? Name your price." "It is not about money," I said truthfully. "It is about trust and respect." Both were broken. I wish TechFusion the best, but my decision is final. I left that meeting with my head held high. The desperation of their attempts to retain me only confirmed I had made the right decision. My final 2 weeks at TechFusion were surprisingly peaceful. Once my decision was made public, several colleagues confided they were also interviewing elsewhere. Jason avoided me completely, having finally realized the depth of his predicament without my knowledge to rely on. On my last day, I cleaned out my desk, while a steady stream of team members stopped by to wish me well. Alex organized a small gathering at a nearby restaurant after work, where even Sarah from the executive team made an appearance. "They promoted Jason too soon," she whispered to me during the party. "Martin realizes it now, but it is too late." I felt a complex mix of emotions as I drove away from TechFusion for the last time. There was sadness for the decade, invested anger at the betrayal, but mostly a sense of freedom and self-respect I had not felt in months. My first day at MedTech Solutions was like entering a different world. I was introduced as a valuable addition to the leadership team. My ideas were welcomed, my experience respected. When I suggested improvements to their medication tracking system based on lessons learned at TechFusion, the CTO personally thanked me for the insight. There were challenges, of course. Learning new systems, adapting to a different company culture, building relationships with new colleagues. But these were healthy challenges that pushed me to grow rather than problems created by dysfunction and nepotism. 6 months later, Alex called to update me on the aftermath at TechFusion. Jason had been quietly demoted after the Memorial Health contract was nearly lost. 3 more senior developers had left. Thomas had been reassigned to a non-leadership role. "They asked about bringing you back as a consultant." Alex laughed. "At 4 times your old salary." "Not interested," I replied honestly. My new role had already led to a promotion. The architecture team I led had delivered a major platform upgrade ahead of schedule. I was sleeping better, spending more time with Lisa, and had even started mentoring junior developers, something I had always wanted to do but never had time for at TechFusion. Looking back, I realized my mistake was giving too much of myself to a company that saw me as merely a resource rather than a person. The experience taught me that loyalty must be a two-way street. Companies that expect everything while giving nothing back do not deserve your dedication. Most importantly, I learned that standing up for yourself professionally does not mean burning bridges or acting unprofessionally. It means recognizing your value, setting appropriate boundaries, and being willing to walk away when those boundaries are not respected. If you are in a similar situation, remember this: your skills, experience, and integrity have value beyond any single company. No job is worth sacrificing your self-respect. Sometimes the most professional thing you can do is to politely but firmly say no, and find somewhere that truly values what you bring to the table. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself at work? Let me know in the comments how it went, and what you learned from the experience. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might be struggling with similar workplace challenges. Thank you for listening, and remember, your career is a marathon, not a sprint. Take care of yourself first, and success will follow.